I need you to understand something about betrayal. It's not the act itself that breaks you, it's the words that come with it. When the woman you built a life with looks you in the eyes and tells you you're mediocre, that you can't provide the lifestyle she deserves, those words carve themselves into your soul. My name is Kevin Morrison, and I'm 38 years old. 4 years ago, my wife Diane walked out on our 8-year marriage because I was poor. She took half of everything I'd worked for and married someone established, my business partner George Hansen. She wanted someone who could actually take care of her, someone who'd already made it. What she didn't know was that George was a fraud, and I was about to become a billionaire. I didn't just recover from their betrayal. I systematically destroyed George while building an empire. And on Diane's wedding day, I drove past in a Ferrari worth more than George's entire net worth, just to make sure she saw exactly what she'd given up. But let me start from the beginning. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. I came home early that Tuesday, carrying takeout menus from the Italian place where we'd gotten engaged. 8 years of marriage, and I still wanted to surprise her with the little things. I found Diane in our bedroom with 3 suitcases packed. Her jewelry box sat empty on the dresser. "You're leaving," I said. Not a question. She didn't even look ashamed, just kept folding a sweater, precise and methodical. "Kevin, I can't do this anymore. I'm 34 years old and I'm living in a rental. My friends own homes. They vacation in Europe, and I'm clipping coupons." The menus slipped from my hand. "We're building something. The business is about to take off." "The business?" She laughed, bitter and sharp. "Your business has been about to take off for 3 years. I'm done waiting for a future that's never coming." My throat tightened. "I've given you everything I have. Everything you have isn't enough." She zipped the suitcase. "I need someone established, someone who can actually provide." "Provide?" My voice rose. "I work 70-hour weeks so we can barely make rent." She finally met my eyes and there was nothing there. No love, no regret, just cold calculation. "I found someone who doesn't have to work that hard because he's already successful. Someone who's made it." The rage hit me like electricity. "You're cheating on me. I'm choosing a better life." She grabbed her bags. "I already filed. My lawyer will be in touch." I stepped in front of the door. "Who is he? Does it matter?" "Yeah, Diane, it fucking matters. Who are you leaving me for?" "Someone who can afford to take care of me." She tried to push past. "That's all you need to know." I didn't move. 8 years. 8 years I supported your art career that produced exactly 0 income. I paid for your ceramics classes, your studio space, your materials. Where was your concern about money then?" She stopped. "That was different." "How?" "Because I still believed in you back then." The words were designed to cut, and they did. "I thought you were going to be someone, but you're just mediocre. And I'm not going to be mediocre with you." My jaw clenched. "The man you're running to, does he know what you're really like? Does he know you maxed out 3 credit cards buying furniture for a rental? That you spent our emergency fund on a handbag?" Her face flushed. "Don't you dare, no you don't dare." I moved closer, and she actually stepped back. "Good. You want to know why we don't own a home? Because I've been paying off your debt for 2 years. Your shopping addiction that you hid from me. The money you borrowed from my business account. That's where our down payment went, Diane. I deserved those things. You deserve exactly what you've earned." I opened the door. "Which is nothing, go ahead. Run to your rich boyfriend. But here's what's going to happen. I'm going to succeed without you. And one day you're going to realize you left right before the rocket took off. And you're going to have to live with that forever." She sneered. "Keep telling yourself fairy tales, Kevin. Some people are meant to make it. Others are meant to dream about it." She walked past me down the stairs. "My lawyer's name is Jeffrey Whitmore. He'll make sure I get what I'm owed." I followed her to the front door. "You're not owed a goddamn thing. Community property says otherwise." She loaded her bags into a car I didn't recognize. A Mercedes, expensive, with tinted windows. The driver stayed hidden. "Goodbye, Kevin. Try not to be too bitter about this." I stood in the driveway, my fist clenched so tight my nails cut into my palms. The Mercedes pulled away, taillights glowing red in the twilight, and something cold settled in my chest. Not heartbreak. Not grief. Pure, crystallized determination. She wanted someone established? Fine. She was about to discover exactly how established I was going to become. 3 days after Diane walked out, I sat in Jeffrey Whitmore's downtown office, surrounded by mahogany and arrogance. His desk was the size of a small car. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the bay, sailboats drifting like toys in the distance. Framed diplomas lined one wall. Harvard Law, various bar admissions, awards from grateful clients who'd bled their spouses dry. "Your wife is entitled to half of all marital assets," Whitmore said, sliding papers across the polished surface. His smile belonged on a shark. "Including 50% equity in Morrison Analytics." I'd expected this. The company's barely profitable. Most of its value is in intellectual property and future potential, which is still an asset. He leaned back in his leather chair. "Mrs. Morrison invested 8 years of her life supporting your entrepreneurial pursuits. She's entitled to compensation for that investment." "She didn't invest anything, she spent. Community property doesn't distinguish between earning and spending, Mr. Morrison." He tapped the papers. "We can do this the easy way or the expensive way, but either way, Diane gets what she wants." My jaw tightened. What she deserves or what she wants? His smile widened. In this case, both. The next 3 months were legal hell. Diane's forensic accountant, a guy named Marcus Pettigrew who looked like he enjoyed ruining people's lives, went through every transaction, every expense, every line item in Morrison Analytics books. He was trying to prove the company was worth more than I claimed, inflating valuations, questioning my accounting methods. I sat through depositions where Whitmore grilled me about my salary, my expenses, my projections. He wanted to paint me as hiding assets, as downplaying the company's worth to cheat Diane out of her fair share. What they didn't know was that I'd been planning my exit strategy for months. Not from Diane. I hadn't seen that coming. From George Hansen. George and I had started Morrison Analytics together 5 years ago. We built machine learning algorithms for supply chain optimization, boring, technical, profitable enough. George handled client relations and sales. I handled everything else, development, infrastructure, the actual innovation that made the company work. But 6 months before Diane left, I discovered George was stealing. Not money. Something worse. He was building identical algorithms on the side, planning to launch a competing company using our intellectual property. I'd found his side corporation, Hansen Logistics Solutions, registered in Delaware. I'd found his partnership agreements with people I'd never heard of. I'd found his client poaching strategy, complete with pricing models designed to undercut Morrison Analytics. I'd said nothing. Instead, I'd quietly restructured everything so I owned the core IP personally, not through the company. George thought he was being clever, hiding his theft behind legal entities and confidentiality agreements. He had no idea I was 5 steps ahead. The day my divorce finalized, 3 months of hell compressed into a single judge's signature, I invited George to lunch. We met at a steakhouse downtown, the kind of place George liked because it made him feel important. He ordered scotch. I ordered whiskey. "Kevin, brother, you've been through hell," he said, all sympathy and fake concern. "Diane really did you dirty." "She did." I sipped my drink, let my shoulders slump. "I'm exhausted, George. The legal fees, the fighting, the constant stress, I can't do this anymore." "I get it, man, divorce is brutal. Which is why I'm cashing out." I met his eyes. "I'm selling you my shares in Morrison Analytics. Below market value, I just want out." His expression flickered. Surprise, then calculation, then pure greed so bright it was almost beautiful. "Kevin, I hate to take advantage when you're going through this, but if you're sure..." "I'm sure." I finished my whiskey. "My lawyer will send the paperwork. Fair price, clean transaction. I just need to walk away and start over somewhere else. Maybe consulting. Maybe nothing for a while. I don't know. I just can't look at this company anymore without thinking about everything I lost." "I understand." He nodded, solemn as a funeral director. "And hey, if you ever need a reference, someone to vouch for your work, I'm here for you." Thanks, George. I flagged down the waiter for the check. That means a lot. 3 weeks later, George owned 85% of Morrison Analytics. He thought he'd won the lottery, controlling stake in a profitable company, core algorithms he could exploit, client relationships he could leverage. He sent me a message the day the transfer finalized. Looking forward to taking this to the next level. Thanks for trusting me with the baby we built together. I didn't respond. Instead, I met him one last time at the same steakhouse to sign the final documents. We shook hands across the table, his palms sweaty with excitement. To your future, I said, raising my glass. To new beginnings, he countered. I smiled. It didn't reach my eyes. You're going to need all the luck you can get, George. I sat in Sentinel Solutions' temporary office, a small but modern suite I'd rented the week before, watching the press release go live at exactly 9:00 a.m. The headline was perfect. Kevin Morrison unveils next-generation supply chain AI platform with proprietary technology. I refreshed the industry news sites, watching the story spread. TechCrunch picked it up first, then VentureBeat, then the Wall Street Journal's tech section. Each article mentioned my name, my innovations, my independence from Morrison Analytics. My phone rang 43 minutes later. George. I let it ring twice before answering. George. You fucking stole from the company. His voice cracked with rage. You can't just take our algorithms and... I stole my own algorithms, George. I leaned back in my chair, calm as glass. The ones I developed independently and owned personally. You might want to check that operating agreement you signed. What operating agreement? The one that specified which IP belonged to the company and which belonged to me individually. I pulled up the document on my screen, though I had it memorized. Section 4.2, subsection C. Intellectual property developed by individual partners outside of company time and resources remains the sole property of the developing partner. You signed it 5 years ago. Silence. Then, you can't just... I can, and I did. Morrison Analytics owns some very good algorithms, George. Solid, profitable, functional. I paused. I own the great ones, the revolutionary ones, the ones that actually work at scale. This is theft. This is business. I opened my email. I'm also reaching out to all our major clients to let them know I'm available for direct consultation. Thought you should hear it from me first. That's a violation of non-compete, he was shouting now. I'll sue you for everything. Non-compete expired 6 months ago. You really should read the documents you signed, George. I hung up on his sputtering. The next 3 months were beautiful. Sentinel Solutions poached 70% of Morrison Analytics clients, not through deception or sabotage, just by being better. I offered superior technology, better pricing, and the kind of personal attention that George's skeleton crew couldn't match. His company went from thriving to surviving overnight. But I wasn't done. I'd spent weeks documenting George's secret side company, Hansen Logistics Solutions, and every illegal thing he'd done to build it. Theft of company resources, breach of fiduciary duty, securities fraud. I packaged it all up with transaction records, emails, partnership agreements, and sent it to the SEC with a detailed cover letter. The investigation would take years, but it would destroy him. I also hired a private investigator. Not for George, for Diane. I need to know who she's with, I told Marcus Delgado, the PI a colleague had recommended. Name, occupation, address. Everything. The photos arrived 2 weeks later. Diane and George, having dinner at an Italian restaurant downtown, holding hands across the table, kissing in the parking lot beside his Mercedes, the same Mercedes she'd left in that day. I laughed until tears streamed down my face. She'd left me for someone established, someone who could provide, someone who was already successful. She'd left me for George Hansen, and I was systematically destroying him while building an empire. The irony was so perfect, it hurt. Sentinel Solutions exploded. Within 6 months, we landed a contract with a Fortune 100 retailer, a deal worth $12 million annually. Within a year, venture capital firms were courting us with 8-figure investment offers. I worked like a man possessed because I was possessed. Every deal I closed, every client I signed, every dollar I earned was revenge in motion. My lawyer called with updates that made my day. Diane's filed 3 motions trying to claim equity in Sentinel, he said. All denied. The company was founded post-divorce with no marital assets. Good. What else? Morrison Analytics filed for Chapter 11 last week. George's assets are frozen pending the SEC investigation. Perfect. Kevin, you really destroyed him. He destroyed himself, I said. I just documented it. Late one night, I stood alone in Sentinel Solutions' growing office space. We'd already expanded twice, looking at the wall where I'd pinned Morrison Analytics' bankruptcy filing. I poured myself expensive scotch, the kind George used to drink when he thought he was winning. I raised the glass. To justice, I said to the empty room. The scotch burned warm and satisfying. 18 months after launching Sentinel Solutions, I walked into our new downtown office building carrying a leather briefcase that cost more than my first car. The lobby was all glass and steel, the kind of place that screamed success before you even stepped inside. I'd signed the lease 3 weeks ago, a 5-year commitment that had made my CFO nervous until I showed her our revenue projections. The elevator doors opened. Jeffrey Whitmore stood inside, expensive suit, shark smile, briefcase in hand. Our eyes met. He looked at me for a long moment. Then his gaze slid away like I was nobody. Like I was just another businessman in the lobby. He pretended not to recognize me. The man who'd sat across from me in his mahogany office, who'd threatened to take me for everything I had, who'd called Diane's greed what she deserved. He acted like we'd never met. I smiled and stepped into the elevator. Good morning, I said. Morning. He didn't look at me. We rode in silence to the 12th floor. My floor. He got off on 15. The doors closed and I laughed quietly. Some people have the decency to own their past mistakes. Others just pretend they never happened. Year 2 of Sentinel Solutions exceeded every projection I'd made. We grew from 12 clients to 37. Revenue hit 9 figures, actual hundreds of millions of dollars flowing through a company I'd built from rage and determination. We weren't just successful, we were dominant. Tech publications started calling me a disruptive innovator. Forbes ran a profile, 3 full pages with photos of me in the office, talking about supply chain optimization like it was poetry. From divorce devastation to industry dominance, Kevin Morrison's remarkable rise. I kept a copy on my desk, not for ego, for proof. I hired aggressively, building a team of the best engineers and data scientists money could buy. People who'd worked at Google, Amazon, Microsoft. They all wanted to be part of what we were building. And we worked in the same building where Jeffrey Whitmore practiced law. Some mornings I'd see him in the lobby. He never acknowledged me. Not once. It was perfect. I bought a house, 4 bedrooms in a neighborhood with old trees and quiet streets. Not a mansion. I didn't need to overcompensate. Just a beautiful space with an office where I could think and a yard where I could breathe. I furnished it with art I actually liked. Not expensive pieces meant to impress. Just things that spoke to me. A landscape by a local artist. Abstract sculptures I'd found at a gallery downtown. The kind of space Diane had always wanted but built on my terms. I dated casually. Nothing serious. A marketing executive named Clarice. A lawyer named Rachel. A professor I'd met at a conference. Smart women with their own lives, their own successes. No pressure, no expectations. Just good company when I wanted it. I was happy, or at least I was satisfied. Through the interconnected web of business relationships that binds everyone in our industry, I heard things about George. Morrison Analytics had emerged from bankruptcy, but barely. It was a shadow of what it used to be. A handful of small clients, a cheap office park in the suburbs, a fraction of the revenue we used to generate together. The SEC investigation was still ongoing. Slow, methodical, inevitable. George was trying to rebuild, trying to survive. I heard he was desperate. I met Todd for drinks at a bar downtown, the kind of place where tech money flows and deals get made over bourbon. I heard they're fighting a lot, Todd said, swirling his whiskey. He worked in the same office park where George had landed after losing his downtown space. Constant arguments, mostly about money. George and Diane? Yeah, she thought she was marrying up, you know. Instead, she's living in a 2-bedroom apartment in the suburbs, working full-time at that gallery. He shook his head. It's rough. Rough. I tasted the word. It didn't inspire sympathy. He proposed last month, Todd continued. Big romantic gesture, took her to some fancy restaurant, got down on one knee, the whole thing. Something dark and satisfied settled in my chest. She said yes? Yeah, but only if they could have a proper wedding. Not some courthouse thing, the full deal. Flowers, venue, reception, everything. Todd laughed. I don't know where he thinks he's getting the money for that. When's the wedding? I don't know, man. Todd studied me over his glass. Why? Just curious. But I wasn't just curious. I was inspired. The following Tuesday, I bought the Ferrari 488 GTB Rosso Corsa Red, the exact color of rage and victory. The salesman practically trembled with excitement as I signed the papers. I drove it to work the next morning, the engine roaring through downtown streets, and parked it in my reserved spot. I stood there for a long moment, hand resting on the hood, staring at my reflection in the polished paint. This car was every 70-hour week, every client meeting, every line of code I'd written at 2 a.m, every sacrifice I'd made while Diane spent money we didn't have on things she didn't need. This was vindication in automotive form, and the best revenge? That was still ahead, 6 weeks before the wedding. The package arrived at my office on a Wednesday afternoon. No return address, just my name on the label, sent to Sentinel Solutions Executive Suite. I opened it at my desk, pulled back the tissue paper, and found the invitation. Elegant, expensive, cream cardstock with gold lettering. Diane Morrison and George Hansen request the pleasure of your company at their wedding celebration. A sticky note was attached. Thought you'd want to see this. I stared at it for a long time. The Grandview Estate. I knew the place. Clifftop venue overlooking the Pacific, all white columns and manicured gardens. The kind of location Diane had fantasized about back when we were engaged. I pulled up the website on my laptop. Minimum $40,000 for a wedding package. George must have taken out loans. Or maybe Diane's parents had finally opened their wallets. Either way, she was getting her dream wedding, 6 weeks from today. I picked up my phone and called Todd. Hey, you still friendly with people at Morrison Analytics? A few, he said, cautious. Why? I need information. When's George's next big meeting? Something important, something he can't afford to miss. Silence on the line. Kevin, what are you planning? Justice, I said, and timing. It took Todd 2 weeks to deliver. We met at the same bar downtown, the noise of happy hour conversations providing cover. George has a pitch meeting scheduled with a potential client, Todd said, sliding his phone across the table to show me the details. Pacific Freight Solutions. Seattle-based logistics company. They're looking at a 3-year contract worth about $3 million in revenue. When's the meeting? 2 o'clock, same day as his wedding. Todd shook his head. He thinks he can do both. Pitch at 2, wedding at 4. He's convinced he can make it work. I smiled. Send me everything you have on Pacific Freight. Kevin. Everything, Todd. He studied me for a long moment, then sighed. You're really going to destroy him, aren't you? He destroyed himself. I'm just making sure he knows it. The plan took shape over the next month. First, I contacted Pacific Freight Solutions directly, introduced myself as CEO of Sentinel Solutions, offered our services at a 20% discount with guaranteed performance metrics that Morrison Analytics couldn't touch. I didn't care if we made money on the deal. I just needed them to reschedule. The procurement director, a woman named Janet Holloway, was intrigued. We're already meeting with Morrison Analytics on the 16th. I know, but after you hear what we can offer, you'll want to compare. I kept my voice professional, friendly. How about we schedule our pitch for 4:30 that same afternoon? Give you both options on the same day. She agreed. Pacific Freight sent Morrison Analytics a courtesy email. We've added another vendor presentation to our evaluation. Your meeting time has been moved to 4:30 p.m. to accommodate our revised schedule. I made sure George's assistant got an anonymous tip about the change, framed as helpful insider information from a friend in the industry. George would know. He'd have to choose. The business that could save his company, or the wedding that was supposed to save his relationship. Knowing George, he'd try to do both. He'd be late, stressed, distracted. It wouldn't be the romantic celebration Diane had dreamed of. The third part of the plan was simpler. The Grandview estate sat right off the Pacific Coast Highway. Beautiful winding road, perfect for a Ferrari. I'd drive past at 4:15, right as the ceremony was supposed to start, not to crash it, not to cause a scene, just to exist, just to let Diane see, in her peripheral vision, exactly what she'd given up. A red streak of wealth and power, impossible to miss. Proof that she'd been catastrophically wrong. I pulled the wedding invitation close and opened my desk calendar. Found the date, marked it with a red pen, circled the time, 4:15 p.m., and wrote one word underneath: victory. I watched the live stream from my office, feet propped on the desk, coffee going cold in my hand. Our COO, Marcus Webb, sharp suit, sharper mind, stood at the podium in front of a wall of tech journalists. Sentinel Solutions is proud to announce our partnership with Amazon to power their next-generation supply chain infrastructure, he said, calm and confident. This collaboration represents the largest deployment of AI-driven logistics optimization in commercial history. My phone started vibrating before he finished the sentence. Text messages, emails, calls flooding in from across the industry. Congratulations. This is huge. You're changing the game, Kevin. I didn't answer any of them. I just watched the stock ticker at the bottom of the live stream as Sentinel's valuation jumped. $1.2 billion. $1.3 billion. $1.4 billion. My personal net worth crossed $500 million while I sat there drinking bad coffee. The tech blogs exploded within minutes. TechCrunch, Wired, Forbes, all running the same headline in different words. Morrison's Sentinel Solutions to power Amazon's supply chain revolution. I smiled. 3 weeks before Diane's wedding, and I'd just become exactly what she'd told me I'd never be. The call from Pacific Freight Solutions came 2 hours later. Janet Holloway, the procurement director, sounded apologetic. Mr. Morrison, I wanted to let you know we've decided to move forward exclusively with Sentinel Solutions. Given your Amazon partnership, it's clear you're the industry standard. We don't need to explore other options. I appreciate that, Janet. We'll make sure you're happy with the decision. I also wanted to apologize. We had scheduled a meeting with Morrison Analytics for this afternoon, but we've canceled it. Didn't seem necessary anymore. I leaned back in my chair. No need to apologize. You made the right business decision. After we hung up, I sat there for a long moment. George wasn't getting his meeting. He wasn't getting his $3 million contract. He wasn't getting anything except the slow realization that everything was gone. My phone rang again. George's name on the screen. I answered. You did this on purpose. His voice was ragged, desperate. The meeting, the timing, everything. You orchestrated all of it. I provided a better service at a better price, George. That's called capitalism. You're destroying me. No. I kept my voice cold. I'm destroying the company you tried to steal from me. I'm destroying the reputation you built on fraud. I'm destroying the life you thought you could have after betraying me. I paused. You destroyed yourself. I'm just making sure everyone sees the rubble. Silence on the line. I could hear him breathing, fast, panicked. Diane and I are getting married in 3 weeks, he finally said. I know. Congratulations. I let the word hang there, empty of warmth. I hope you can afford the honeymoon. He hung up. I set the phone down and stared out at the city. You ever watch someone's whole world collapse in real time? It's quieter than you'd think. 2 weeks before the wedding, the SEC filed formal charges. Securities fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, corporate theft. Todd forwarded me the press release. I read it twice, savoring every word. George was facing millions in fines, potential prison time. His lawyer, some expensive guy named Richard Torres, managed to keep George out of custody pending trial, but his passport was confiscated. No honeymoon, no escape. Just a wedding, and then the slow march toward federal court. The updates came through business contacts over the following days. They're fighting constantly, Todd told me over drinks. Diane's panicking. She's about to marry a guy who might go to prison. Is she calling it off? She announced the wedding publicly, sent invitations to everyone. She's too proud to cancel now. Todd shook his head. It's a disaster, man. George is stressed out of his mind. Diane's crying every other day, the whole thing's falling apart. But they're still going through with it. Yeah. Saturday at 4. The Grandview Estate, like nothing's wrong. He studied me. You're really going to drive past, aren't you? I'm really going to drive past. The evening before the wedding, I stayed late at the office. Sentinel Solutions was quiet. Everyone had gone home to their families, their lives, their happiness. I stood at the window looking out at the city lights. Tomorrow I'd drive down the Pacific Coast Highway in a car worth more than George's entire net worth. I'd exist in Diane's peripheral vision for exactly 10 seconds, and I'd close this chapter forever. Not with violence, not with confrontation, just with the undeniable proof that she'd been wrong, that I was everything she'd needed, and she'd thrown it away. I raised my empty coffee cup to the window. To justice, I said to no one, and I smiled. I stood in my garage at 3 o'clock, looking at the Ferrari. The suit I'd chosen that morning was perfect, charcoal gray, tailored so precisely it felt like armor. Not for the wedding, never for the wedding, for me. I ran my hand along the Ferrari's hood, feeling the warmth of the afternoon sun on the metal. This was it, the moment I'd been building toward for 4 years. Not the Amazon deal, not the billion-dollar valuation, not the house or the success or any of it. This, right here. The absolute certainty that I'd won. I got in, started the engine, and backed out into the sunlight. The Pacific Coast Highway was perfect, sunny, clear. The ocean glittering like every promise I'd ever kept to myself. I had the windows down, the engine roaring beneath me, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the calm kind, the victorious kind. You know that clarity you get when you realize your path was always going to lead exactly here? When every sacrifice, every 70-hour week, every moment of doubt was just preparation for this inevitable conclusion. That's what I felt. Driving south with the wind in my face and the Ferrari doing exactly what it was built to do. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I was just right. And Diane was about to see it. I reached the Grandview Estate at 4:15, 15 minutes after the ceremony was supposed to start. The estate sat on a cliff overlooking the ocean. White columns, manicured gardens, exactly the kind of place Diane had fantasized about for years. I could see the setup from the road, white chairs arranged in rows, flower arches framing the altar, guests in formal wear. I could see Diane in her wedding dress standing near the arch, looking furious. I slowed the Ferrari just enough to take it all in. And that's when George's car screeched into the parking lot. A Honda Civic, not even new. He jumped out, panicked and disheveled, at least 20 minutes late to his own wedding. I drove past. The Ferrari's engine announced my presence like a victory song, deep, powerful, impossible to ignore. Multiple guests turned to look. Some pointed. I didn't stop. Didn't slow down more than traffic required. Didn't even glance back. I just existed in Diane's peripheral vision for exactly 10 seconds. And then I was gone. Continuing down the coast toward the restaurant where I'd celebrate the Amazon partnership with Sentinel's executive team. Several of those wedding guests knew who I was. Our social circle still overlapped enough that someone would recognize the car, recognize me. The whispers were already starting. Is that Kevin Morrison? He's doing really well now. Didn't Diane used to be married to him? I smiled and pressed the accelerator. I arrived at Maria 45 minutes later. The valet's eyes widened when I pulled up. Beautiful car, sir. Thank you. I handed him the keys and walked inside. Clarice Rodriguez was already at the table, looking elegant in a navy dress, her dark hair pulled back. She saw me and smiled, but there was something else in her expression. Amusement. Disbelief. Did you really drive past your ex-wife's wedding in a Ferrari? She asked before I even sat down. I sat, ordered a drink, and met her eyes. Yes. Kevin. What? I was on my way here. The coast road is the scenic route. Kevin. She was trying not to laugh. Fine. I grinned. Yes. I drove past, on purpose. at exactly the right time to make sure she saw what she gave up. Clarice shook her head. That's incredibly petty. Incredibly satisfying, I corrected. She laughed then, full and genuine. You're impossible. I'm victorious. I raised my glass. She left me for being poor. I wanted her to see exactly how not poor I turned out to be. And how does it feel? I thought about that for a moment. About Diane waiting at the altar, furious. About George arriving late, panicked. About the Ferrari's engine echoing off those white columns. It feels, I said slowly, like I was right all along. 6 months after the wedding, Todd and I met for lunch at our usual spot downtown. He didn't even wait for the server to leave before he started. So George and Diane are falling apart. I set down my water glass. Falling apart how? Every way possible. Todd leaned back, studying me. Money problems, marriage problems, regret problems. Regret problems, I repeated. Yeah. He grinned, but there was something cautious in his expression. She thought she was marrying a successful businessman. Instead, she married a guy facing federal charges and bankruptcy. Again. I felt that familiar dark satisfaction settle in my chest. Morrison Analytics? Completely dead. George shut it down 3 weeks ago. He's working as an independent consultant now, making maybe 1/10 of what he used to. And Diane? Full-time at the gallery. I heard she's looking into teaching art classes on the side for extra money. Todd paused. You did this. You orchestrated his entire downfall. I documented his crimes and built a better company, I said evenly. That's not orchestration. That's justice. Justice is a funny word for revenge. Maybe they're the same thing. Todd didn't disagree. A year after the wedding, my phone rang with a number I'd deleted but still recognized. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. Kevin? Diane's voice was small, broken. Nothing like the cold certainty from 4 years ago. I know I have no right to call. You don't. I wanted to apologize. For what I said, for how I treated you, for leaving the way I did. I was silent, letting her sit in the discomfort. I made a mistake, she continued. A huge mistake. I thought George was stable, established, but everything fell apart. His company, his reputation, our life together. We're getting divorced. I'm sorry to hear that. I wasn't sorry at all. Are you? She laughed, bitter and ragged. You must be thrilled. You got everything you wanted. Success, money, revenge. I didn't want revenge, Diane. I looked out my office window at the city I'd conquered. I wanted you to be wrong about me. Silence. And you were, I continued. Catastrophically, completely wrong. I know. She was crying now. I know, and I have to live with that. I have to live with knowing I walked away from someone who became everything I wanted. Because I didn't believe in him. That's not my problem anymore. Kevin, please. No. My voice was hard. You don't get to call me 4 years later and expect sympathy. You don't get to apologize and have it mean anything. You made your choice. You lived with it. Now leave me alone. I hung up. Clarice, who'd been listening from the doorway, came and wrapped her arms around me. You okay? Better than okay. And I meant it. I'm free. 2 years after I hung up on Diane, I stood on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange watching the opening bell ceremony for Sentinel Solutions. The IPO was one of the most successful tech offerings of the year. Financial media couldn't stop talking about it. My personal wealth crossed $500 million before lunch. I thought I'd feel different. Vindicated, maybe. Triumphant. Instead, I just felt complete. I bought a bigger house. Not because I needed the space, but because I wanted it. 6 bedrooms overlooking the coast with an office that had floor-to-ceiling windows and a yard where I could actually breathe. I furnished it with pieces that meant something, art that spoke to me, books I'd always wanted to read. I started the Morrison Foundation 3 months later. We focused on helping entrepreneurs from modest backgrounds access capital and mentorship, the kind of support I'd had to build for myself. I gave talks at conferences, sat on corporate boards, built something that would outlast me. Legacy, I realized, wasn't about the money. It was about what you did with it. I married Clarice on a Saturday afternoon overlooking the ocean. Just us, 20 close friends, and a commitment built on mutual respect and genuine partnership. Everything my marriage to Diane had never been. "You look happy," Clarice said as we stood on the cliff waiting for the ceremony to start. "I am happy." And I meant it. Actually happy. Not revenge happy or success happy. Just happy. She kissed me. "Good. Because I didn't sign up to marry a bitter man." "No. You signed up to marry a wealthy, successful, gorgeous man." I grinned. "Who happens to not be bitter anymore?" "Much better. George served 8 months in federal prison for securities fraud. He came out to nothing. No company, no reputation, no prospects. Last I heard through Todd, he was working IT support at some suburban office park, resetting passwords and fixing printer jams. The man who'd tried to steal my life's work was fixing printers. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Justice had already been served. Diane remarried, some accountant she met through mutual friends. They lived modestly in a small house outside the city. She taught art classes at a community center, making enough to get by but not enough to thrive. She was fine. Just fine. Which was exactly what she deserved. I saw her one last time by accident, at a coffee shop downtown. She sat alone at a corner table, grading student artwork with reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked older, tired, the kind of tired that comes from years of regret. She saw me. Something flickered in her eyes, pain, recognition, the ghost of what could have been. I nodded politely and kept walking. Because here's what I learned. Revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about proving them wrong so completely that they have to live with the knowledge of their mistake forever. Diane left me for being poor. She married a man she thought was rich, and she ended up poorer than if she'd just stayed and believed in me. That's not revenge. That's poetry. I drove the Ferrari on Sundays, usually early morning when the coast road was clear. I'd think about that day I drove past her wedding, and I'd smile. Not because I'd hurt her, though I'd be lying if I said that didn't feel good at the time. I smiled because I was right. I was always going to succeed. I was always going to build something incredible. I was always going to prove that the man she called mediocre was anything but. She just wasn't patient enough to see it. Late one Sunday evening, I sat on the deck with Clarice beside me, watching the sun sink into the ocean. "You ever think about her?" Clarice asked. "Sometimes." I took her hand. "Less and less, though." "Good." She leaned against my shoulder. "You deserve to be free of that." "I am free." I squeezed her hand. "Completely free." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the light fade. "You know what I figured out?" I said eventually. "What?" "Some people are meant to recognize potential. Others are meant to regret missing it." I looked at her. "Diane's in the second category. And you?" I smiled. "I'm in the Ferrari." I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.